Yeah, if you can start with your food rules, that
Mm,
would be, and then we can just unravel it from there.
yeah, absolutely. And for me, it was really, I was a weight loss coach
Okay.
for 5 years. And my orthorexia developed because I wanted to be a good mentor. I wanted to be a good person that they would look up to as far as food and eating is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
And it slowly devolved. It's I because I used to say I'm gonna eat out one time and go get like Raisin Canes, which is this like fried chicken. It's like probably one of the worst foods you can eat. I try not to label the foods now, but it I haven't had it for years, but I would get that like once or twice a week.
Mm-hmm.
And I stopped doing that, stopped drinking soda. I would allow myself like one sweet something every once a week, maybe. And it really started to kind of spiral and affect my life because when I'd go on vacation, my wife was like kind of upset with me because I'd have to get the right foods at the right time. And I was eating like really, really healthily, like eggs, a brown rice, a starch of some kind, like a really high quality starch, and vegetables for breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
That was my typical breakfast. And then pretty much the same thing for lunch and dinner, maybe a salad with some protein.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you can eat too well.
So I would have thought, I mean, that's vastly better than me. I am my orthorexia rules are far more rigid than that. Like they're so limiting that I got down to a point where I could only eat blueberries and pumpkin. That's all I
Mhm.
could handle eating. And you cannot survive on blueberries and pumpkin. And then once I realized I had a problem and I started bringing food back, um, I made myself eat meat. So I was eating lamb, I think
Mhm.
lamb, eggs, the blueberries, the pumpkin smoothies were a big savior for me because I could put the blueberries and I could put banana and have it with coconut cream. So I was getting the fat. But for me, it was also limiting. I didn't eat very much. So I was having lamb chops, but it was only two lamb chops, and that's all I would have for breakfast. So I went from having like you a mass. I actually had a big breakfast. I used to have brown rice with veggies and lamb chops to just having a chop.
Wow.
Um, and I found it really, I still find it really hard to eat anything outside of my rules. And mine is only organic and no salicylates, no phytates, no lectins, no vegetable oils, nothing processed, no sugar. So by the time you take every food that represents all of those different food groups, there's almost nothing left. So I wonder how, because I would have thought that brown rice, veggies, and eggs 3 times a day would have been enough to sustain you.
And it was. I was starting to experience, and this is probably more my mind than anything else, but I was starting to experience acid reflux
Mm-hmm.
and was like, this is weird because I'm eating the better than 99% of everybody. And I know I think I'm betting that you have food anxiety. And I would have that food anxiety when I would go to a meal or I couldn't control the food.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that I was listening to one of your earlier episodes, and you talked about like that was something that you kind of could control
Yeah.
in your life. And
Food
that
is the
was
only
something,
thing I can control.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that that was something that I felt like I could control too.
Mm.
Like if I could do that, and I was increasingly obsessed with longevity and health.
Yeah.
And it was so ironic that my health was getting worse
Yeah.
as I was eating better.
Yeah. There's something I talked about on podcasts that recording with Julia, which she's going to be first episode in season 2, and you're the second episode in season 2, so it's the one before this one. And we were actually talking about how it was really interesting that it was the fear of death and illness that created the eating disorder, but then it was also a fear of death and illness that stopped the eating disorder.
Mm.
And it's like, this is just it's too weird to have the exact same fear be the cause of it starting and stopping, because like I've ended up with some health issues, and the constant tiredness, because there's not enough to physically sustain my body. And I'm guessing it was kind of the same with you from what you said in the beginning, is that it wasn't enough to sustain you. Even though, like I said, it seems like it's really healthy, but if it's not enough to sustain you and you can't bring any other foods in, then you have a problem.
And I think that also connected with that for a lot of people with orthorexia is exercise too. That and this was the case for me. I don't know if you experienced the kind of like the exercise anxiety, or
no, I do nothing.
If I ate something, I would exercise, but and I was exercising every single day. I was meditating, I was doing cold showers, I was doing all these wonderful things. And I thought I was kind of controlling my mood through it.
Mm-hmm.
I had those fears too, that it was in a lot of ways driven by the fear of cancer, of all of these, things that people are experiencing in our lives that we see all the time.
Yeah.
And it's just so funny. I don't think my body let me go down that far, because I had that health concern. It really woke me up.
Do you remember what the trigger was for you going down the path of orthorexia first? Was there a trigger? So for me, even though I'd had kind of eating issues, when my mum got sick with a terminal illness and I'd just given birth to my daughter, that was like the amplifier for me. I went into over control, and that's when it really kicked in, my food restrictions, the need for health, like the fear, because mum had cancer and my dad had already died of Alzheimer's. So it was that fear of, if I put anything in my body, it could kill me. And then that's why I say it was no lectins, no phytates, no salicylates, no oxalates, because when you go down that journey, and also I was vegan at the time, I wouldn't eat any meat. So when you go down that journey, it's when you start researching, and I'm a researcher, I love just filling my brain with information. It backfires, because there are so many people out there saying carnivore is the only way, and then vegan is the only way, and science proves that carnivore works, and then science proves that vegan works, and then science proves that no oxalate works, and then science proves that no salicylates works, and science proves that no dairy works, and science proves that no gluten works. And there's so much scientific proof out of there, which I have had to really take a big step back and go, you know what, maybe science doesn't work. Science a long time ago used to say that smoking for women was really healthy for them. Science can be wrong. So it's that constant bombardment. And I wonder, what was the trigger for you that started the orthorexia?
It really was the job. It was being around food, talking about food, especially food as bad, and food as connected with guilt and shame.
Yeah.
for so many of my clients that I started to have that same, I internalized those conversations because I was around them all day long.
Yeah.
And then it sounds like you had kind of this stressor in your life that kind of kicked it into overdrive. Similarly, my mother-in-law had a brain tumor, and she had it operated on, but that was a huge stressor. We went to Las Vegas, and I definitely did not eat well. I know I had a lot of anxiety around that, but
Mm,
not too much actually. But when I came back,
mm,
that was when it really kind of kicked into overdrive. And I noticed even that my mood was crashed,
yeah.
and I was losing more and more weight because of what I was eating. And my wife was really concerned. And I, like you, I'd just done tons and tons of research. I've read tons of both weight loss books and health and longevity books.
Mm-hmm.
I was always looking for something, and it just didn't make sense to me that I knew all of the right things, I was reading the right things, and you can hyper focus on it because you are trying to get something out of it, I think.
Yeah. And I
A
think that
feel.
fear of death, like it puts a megaphone on that that food anxiety that's probably already there. I don't know about you, but mine had already been there for a while. So I started only eating organic, or mainly eating organic, in my early 20s. So it was a long time ago. And mine started because I had to take out gluten and dairy because I was reacting so badly to them. So I was already restricting, and I was restricting by force because it made me so sick. So there was kind of like this already, like this underlying, well, I'm already have to restrict my food.
Yeah.
And I do understand the control. The control is huge. What I don't know is how to stop it, because I'm trying at the moment to bring in more foods that are unsafe, which
Mm.
is like the list is endless. There are even organic, there are organic foods that I won't eat. I won't eat organic vegetable oil or organic sugar. Um, any kind of organic cakes and things like that make me very nervous. Anything with natural flavors, even though it could be a completely organic thing, if it has natural flavors, I find it really hard. Um, so there's still a lot of food that I won't eat that's even organic. And now that I'm in the mud of trying to eat food, I can feel that feeling inside of me that just has I can't think of what the word, it's very apathetic towards food. Like there's just nothing, it's like there's nothing there. Food is just very gray. There's no color in food for me. It's very gray. Preparing food I find really hard. So it's easy for me. That's why I kind of started just eating a chop, because it was easy for me to stick a chop in the fry
Mhm.
pan and just cook it. It takes 5 minutes, or eat 2 eggs because they take 5 minutes. I'm not having to boil rice. I'm not having to chop up veggies and prepare them. I can just eat a chop. I can cook a couple of them and leave them in the fridge and then just eat a lamb chop as a snack throughout the day. And that would be what I eat. So I'd love to kind of, once you realize that you had gone through and you are in this moment where you're finding it hard to eat anything other than brown rice, veggies, and
Mhm.
eggs, how did you start eating? Like you must have, did you feel that fit, like there's just this complete, I want to say apathy, I don't know if that's the right descriptive word, towards food, where there was just no desire whatsoever. So when you pick it up and eat it, you're just like, nah, I don't even, that's like
Yeah.
cardboard. Do you kind of get what I mean?
Absolutely. I used to love to cook, and I would spend hours in the grocery store
Me
picking out.
too.
I know, I loved it, and I would
So did
make all
I.
these beautiful recipes, and
Yep.
there is no interest whatsoever in that right now. I
Yeah.
want it to be quick. I don't care. I don't really, and a lot of times don't really care what it tastes like. I mean, it's gotten better. And a lot of that for me especially was when I was really forced to add in other foods
Hmm.
during when I had the stomach issues, because I could not eat like the complex carbs, and I couldn't digest vegetables very well. It
Hmm.
was it was giving me a lot of acid reflux, burning, so much anxiety. Food was just I didn't even want to. I didn't even want to eat.
Yeah.
And I was having to eat like things that were easy to digest, like pasta, and then I think I would have so much anxiety around it that I was I would have these thoughts just like over and over and over, and this anxiety that would trigger around meal times. I would literally shake
Mm.
like close to meal times just a little bit ago. And yeah, I went more recently. I went to Hawaii, and I ate really. I still saw that that I wasn't getting ordering off the menu what I really wanted
Hmm.
in sometimes, and then sometimes I would just say, okay, I'm gonna eat that. I'm gonna have it, the burger and the fries. So there's improvement, but yeah, I hit rock bottom there for a while.
Yeah.
I was up in the morning at 3:30 in the morning pacing around. I went to the emergency room once, and that was really no help. They're just like, there's nothing wrong with you, and there wasn't. They ran tests, spent $5,000 to learn that there's nothing wrong.
Mm.
And I was almost admitted to a couple of mental institutions. It was that bad.
Mm.
Yeah.
Then how did you come out of that? Because
Hmm.
that level of anxiety and that level of fear, how did you come out of that? I mean, obviously you've got an amazing wife who's clearly supportive, um, and encouraging. I'm assuming she was encouraging, or at least
Yeah,
standing over you, forcing you to eat food.
she was. Well, and she still is. Like I tell her, "Hey, I ate a cookie," and then she's like, "Yay!" We celebrate a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. You got to celebrate those small,
Yeah,
like those tiny little wins of I ate something that scared the shit out of me.
yeah, yeah. She's been so supportive.
Yeah.
There's been a couple of times where I pushed her a little too far. Like she made dinner one time and I didn't like what she made, and she got really mad at me, and so I'm like, okay, okay, I'll eat it. It's not worth our relationship. It really isn't.
Yeah. And you
But
survived through eating that. Isn't that the fascinating thing, that you came out the other side and you're still alive. And this was another thing that came up in the call with Julie, was for her, she said, I ate something and then I said to myself, I'm still alive. I'm still
yeah,
here. And what I said to her, which I'd be interested to hear what you think about this, I said, yes, but what about in 20 years time? Because I'm not eating for right now. I'm not eating for 20 years time when I could get cancer. And I'm trying to stop that from happening. So I wonder, if do you have that, do you kind of understand that fear of, well, you're not eating for right now, you're not eating for the future when you might have heart disease or Alzheimer's or cancer or diabetes or all the things that you might get in 10 or 20 years time. Do you get that?
yeah, a little bit still. I think we have that kind of that pendulum, and it's
Mm.
it's so funny that like And that's why I think there's kind of a stigma around orthorexia, because most people are on this side of the pendulum where they don't care and they're really kind of eating crap. I mean, like eating foods that are not beneficial for them in that 20 years down the line.
Yeah.
Drinking beer, and I had a beer the other day. Yay! And I'm not going to have one every single night. And there's this pendulum that swings over here, that's kind of where most people are at in our society. I think they're eating their feelings. We see that on TV, that all those messages, whenever somebody gets stressed, what are they doing? They're either drinking alcohol on TV or they're eating food.
Always in the kitchen,
Yeah.
having a hard conversation, especially the women. Like, it's amazing how many shows I watch. I don't have a TV, but I do watch different stuff online. And it is amazing how many times I've watched shows where the girls go, let's get a glass of wine. I've had such a hard day.
Yeah.
And I look at it and go, well, why don't you just have a conversation and a drink of water? What do we need the wine?
So yeah, there's so much pressure over here to get healthier, because people realize, I think in their own intuitive intelligence, that being over here is not healthy for them, that they're eating through stress, they're eating because of those feelings. And we can swing over here, which is good. We can be in this space where we're eating healthily, we're eating for longevity, but people, like, we can replace, I think we replace addictions, and we replace addictions with healthier things. Yeah, but then there's still addiction.
Yes.
And then we swing over this way to where we're eating so hyper vigilant. The stress that it's causing is worse for our bodies than probably about the same as eating the crap.
Yeah, that's exactly what Julia said in the call too. She had exactly the same realization, and I just wanted to validate that for you. That's exactly what she said. The stress, the cortisol levels, the everything, your adrenals just constantly in flight mode, because obviously we're not really in fight. We're not fighting. We're fleeing. We're like, just, I'm out of here. I can't do this anymore. It's too hard.
Yeah. That's funny.
We're all doing the same thing. And it all stems, and this is a complete assumption, and just so I don't make an ass out of you and me, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm assuming that yours came from childhood trauma, that there is trauma somewhere along the line in your childhood, that the disassociation from that fear or that pain, whether it was an addictive parent or whether there was something that happened when you were a kid. What I'm finding for most of us is that there's something that happens that we don't know how to handle, and we just push it down and push it down and push it down. And then over the years, we have another trauma and another trauma and another trauma, and we have a series of traumas because we're all in our 30s, 40s, and 50s. Some people I've talked to are in their 60s. We've had years of buildup of not dealing with our feelings, of completely disassociating from ourselves. And then we find ourselves in this position where something happens that is too big for us to handle when we go into control. So do correct me if I am wrong, was there stuff that you think was the actual trigger for all of this?
I don't know. My wife is an expert in trauma, and she works with kids who've been abused, and she suspects that there might have been something, but I don't have any recollection or anything.
No memory
like that.
yet. Yeah.
No memory of it. So
it can come up. It's interesting. One of my closest friends,
there's mental health issues.
Yeah. She she didn't find out until she was in her 50s that she was physically abused. Like, it was a memory that came up. And I don't know if you know who Mel Robbins is, but she found the same thing. She didn't remember until she was in her, I think it was late 40s, that she remembered. And it came to her in a dream one night, and she went, holy crap, that's why I have all these issues. It's and I'm not just talking physical abuse. I haven't gone, as far as I know, although I have all the signs for going through physical abuse, I don't have any memory of it, but I went through a lot of emotional abuse as a kid growing up, and a lot of emotional trauma.
Yeah, not that I know of.
Something to ponder, more to unravel.
Maybe not. It's well, and you kind of had asked me how I brought myself out of this crashing place. And I got to see a psychiatrist. So and what I'm realizing now is that I was really giving so much power to my thoughts, that and my thoughts were just on repeat. They were just like, I used to like meditate and do yoga, and I couldn't anymore. My mind was so intrusive, so compulsive, so fearful. And I got on some anxiety meds that kind of slowed me down a little bit. It was kind of like a parachute, maybe. I think you talked in the other conversation about parachutes, and I was able to slow down. I slowly went onto it, and then I came off really slowly, and then I found this understanding that has changed my life. But it saved my marriage. It's helping me see, it's helping me realize every day. I'm having realizations around the orthorexia, around the food, but also around things like fear. This, and maybe I'll speak to it. This, it's one mistake that people make. This is the one mistake. They think that your body is this confirming machine. So your consciousness confirms your thoughts, but they think that it's confirming what's outside the situation that people are in. So if that person is making me angry, then they think that my emotion of anger is confirming that that person is making me angry. Does that make sense?
Yep.
That's the mistake. That's the illusion. It's really our thinking. It's only confirming our thinking. Our emotions are a guide to our thoughts. And if we are really low, like I was low this morning. I think you had said that you had a little bit of a low morning too. That's a guide to show us that our thinking is a little bit off.
Yeah. It's a good reminder.
It's the reminder to question your thinking, and then it might be a little bit warped. It's your guide not to the world around you, not to, oh, this person in this situation, my dog right now, he's struggling. He's very close to passing. It's not, my feelings are not a guide to him in his situation. They're independent.
Yeah.
But it feels like it. And you can remember that.
It is a good thing to remember. Yeah. And I hear you on that. I actually, I think I've come to a very similar realization only in the last day or like 24 hours or so, because I'm in a situation right now where I've got someone living on my block of land and my thoughts ruminate about it a lot. And because I'm moving myself into a better feeling place, I'm feeling that chasm in between. So when I'm feeling okay and then my thoughts go on this massive thought trip into some negative conversation that I'm having with this person, or some negative experience that I've had or might have or could have, or there's potential for it, you know, my brain goes all over the place. I can feel myself going from where I am right now, which is kind of, I'm sitting not in any good feelings, but I'm also not sitting in any bad feelings. I'm just sitting in like a place of nothingness right now. So when I go into that ruminating negative thoughts and I'm here, and it was just this morning, it happened. I think when I was washing the dishes, it happened. And I took a minute and I said, you know what? It doesn't matter whether she's here or not. She is not the problem. The problem is my brain. The problem is I'm thinking, I'm ruminating, I'm having conversations in my head. And once she goes, if I don't deal with this, someone is going to turn up to replace it. And then I'm going to be ruminating again. And then I'm going to be thinking again, and I'm going to be having the exact same negative thoughts that create these feelings that I'm not enjoying, because it's all me. It's got nothing to do with her, even though her behavior might be wrong or bad or poor. And I'm very sorry about your dog. Like you said, even though your dog might be getting ready to pass, it's kind of really hard to look at that and go, well, how do I choose to not feel bad about this external experience? And it took a lot for me, especially when my mum was dying. I don't know if I could have done this when she was dying, to look at her and go, I don't have to feel bad about this. But in that, actually, interestingly enough, that you watched the call that I did, or you listened to the call that I did with Bob Doyle, because in that we actually talked about death. And because I was going through this back then, like my dad had just died like a year or two before I started my last show, whatever it was, 16, 17 years ago. And I talked to him about death, and we were talking about people's perspective about death. And I think in it, I said that not everybody grieves. Not everybody mourns. There are actually people out there that celebrate, because they're celebrating the life. They're not grieving the death. And you've just reminded me from you saying yesterday that you listened to that call. It's like, oh yeah, I actually had this conversation a long time ago. If you don't have to mourn the loss, I don't have to ruminate and see it negatively. It's my brain that is programmed that way, that is causing the trauma inside my body. So I'm so glad that you brought that up, because it's a really good reminder for me.
And if that were I know that that's the case. I know it here.
Yeah.
Maybe not intellectually. I know it intuitively.
Yeah.
And if that were the case, then okay, great. You know, we have to have positive thoughts, or if someone passes in our lives, then I have to make myself have positive thoughts. And that's a trap too.
Yeah, because then you're disassociating from the actual feeling of the grief too. There must be a balance in between.
Yeah, and I was trying to cultivate the thoughts. I was trying to cultivate these positive feelings, and I was pretty good at it. But then, even when I was doing all of these things, I started to kind of crash a little bit. And then I thought that I needed to wrestle it back into control. And by doing that, I just forced it down even further.
Yeah.
And the second part of this understanding that is so important, and this is a part that a lot of people are missing. Second part is that we have a psychological immune system. This is from he's a Scottish mystic named Sid Banks, and that we have this psychological immune system, that we are naturally buoyant, that the same energy that gives us life, that heals our cuts, will bring us back to this state. And then they did this science experiment where they tracked people who won the lottery and people who lost a limb. And this event happened, and the people who won the lottery, they had a momentary higher experience of life. They were like, woohoo, yeah. And people who lost a limb were like, oh my gosh, what is my life going to even be like now? But naturally, it can take time, even with grief, even positive things, but it will bring you back. It brings you back naturally. They talk about it like it's the understanding is called the three principles, but they talk about it kind of like a beach ball that you're holding underwater, and that if you just let go of the beach ball, it'll pop back up to the surface. But we're so busy holding it under the water because we think that's our jobs. We think that we have to control the beach ball.
So then the question that naturally comes from that is, how do you stop?
How do you
stop control? Yeah, how do you stop doing that? How do you stop controlling? And there's such a big push to let go. You need to let go. So yeah, but what? How? How? No one seems to answer the how. I don't know if anyone really knows, but but how do you let go?
I think I can speak to that. So there are a couple of ways that you can. A lot of the times you kind of have to first know that you're holding on. And I think more and more people are realizing that they're grasping. I was definitely grasping. I was holding on. I was white knuckling. And I think a lot of people, I sometimes talk about people living life full throttle, and I don't mean like extreme. I mean that they are living their lives with all of this stress, with this worrying, because they have a fear that if they let go of the throttle, that, I don't know, that they'll crash, that they'll careen out of control. And that natural system that will bring you back, if we look towards it, if we slow down, because it's kind of like a bubble making machine. Thoughts are kind of like bubbles. And it will give us more bubbles. It will give us new bubbles. And then those will give us new feeling. And we don't have to go around popping the bubbles. That's a job. You can try and do that. You spend your whole day popping bubbles and getting rid of thoughts.
And then you end up exhausted at the end of the day.
Yeah. The bubbles pop on their own. Sometimes they last a little bit longer. Sometimes they land on the grass and hang out for a little while. But they naturally pop. And if you realize that, wow, you can let go because you see how it works. So it's less of a doing and more of a realization of an understanding how these principles of life are giving you the thoughts, are making them real. And then knowing that I'll get new thoughts.
So then I guess I'm kind of, for me, I'm calling it sitting in the mud at the moment because that's what I feel like I'm doing. I'm not, I used to be, I feel like I used to be lying in the mud with it all piled on top of me. And then the mud was like revolting. It was like chicken shit mud. It wasn't even nice mud. It was chicken shit mud. And then I was lying with my head up, and then I was kind of lying, sort of pushing myself up. And so I kind of feel like, no, now I'm sitting in it. So this is progress for me. I actually feel like I'm sitting in the mud. And I guess for me, as I'm listening to you try and look, okay, how am I doing that for myself now? And I guess it's kind of, I think it's just feeling the feelings is me letting go. Instead of thinking about the feelings, instead of ruminating, I said before, ruminating on the thoughts.
Yeah.
Instead of letting the thought create the feeling and then letting the feelings create more thoughts and having it be this constant circle of, well, now I feel this, so now I'm thinking this, now I'm thinking this, now I'm feeling this, and going back and forth and back and forth. For me, the stopping point isn't going down the path of positive thinking, because to me, I'm not really dealing with what's here. It's just sitting in the feeling instead of trying to shove it down or change it or distract it or disassociate from it. It's just sitting in it. And I think from what I understand from what you shared, that's kind of what letting go for me is right now. It's just sitting and just not trying to do anything, just putting up my hands and going, I'm right here. I'm not doing anything. I'm just right here. And that feels like letting go for me. I'm so glad I asked you that question, because I didn't even think that I was letting go, but I think I am.
Wow. When you allow those feelings, then, and especially the feelings to just kind of be in the body, they really do dissipate. And what really brings to mind, there's one of my favorite Rumi poems, and he talks about fire and ice, or it's fire and water. The people who go into the water end up in the fire. They come out in the fire, and then the people who go into the fire come out in the water. And if we are willing to just be with our feelings, then they'll dissipate and we'll come up into the water of our own well-being. We're not going to get burned. Well, I think we're so afraid of getting burned.
I think I'm afraid of getting stuck in the feelings.
Yeah.
Like getting stuck in the hurt and never coming out of it. I think there was a part of me a long time ago that thought, if I feel this, I'm never going to stop, because there's just so much of it. But you're right, as I'm doing it and I'm sitting and I'm feeling, but I also spend time acknowledging. So I do spend a lot of time saying, I'm right here. You are not alone. I hear you. And I'm validating myself a lot right now. It does dissipate. It comes back, but it does dissipate.
Yeah.
And I feel like the dissipating, that space between it coming back, is getting longer and longer and longer. Where I used to wake up in the morning, and the first thing after that kind of 3 to 5 seconds before my memories all came in, that moment just before I realized this was my life, I would feel okay. And then all these, like this flood of feelings would all come in and go, oh, damn. And then they would sit here all day. They never left. I would feel just so worthless and so pathetic and so just so horrible. And there are so many different words I can use to describe how I felt, but it was really horrible, and it never left. It was here all day. It was here when I woke up in the morning, and it was still there when I went to sleep. And then if I woke up in the middle of the night, it was there. It never left, but now it does. It does leave. And I'm not necessarily, like I said before, I'm not necessarily moving into good, happy, rainbow unicorn feelings. I'm sitting in the nothingness, but the nothingness is nice. Like, it's relief. But I am noticing as I'm sitting in it and it does dissipate, that time between is getting longer and longer and longer and longer. And it was just this morning that I said to myself, when I was sitting in the nothingness and I could feel it, because I had this emotion, like I said, I was sitting in the mud and I had this emotion come up. And so I sat and said, you're not alone. I'm right here with you. We're going through this together. I'm right here. It dissipated. And then for the first time, I think ever, I had this moment where I thought, I could actually start welcoming in joy. I feel like I'm in a space now where joy would come in. Not would or will. I'm still at I could allow joy in. I could allow happiness. I could, because the beautiful thing Julie said in the other call was, she said she's on the other side where she just sees every color of the rainbow now. Every color of the rainbow is in food. It's in feelings. And she said, I didn't even know I could feel this much happiness in my life, because her eating disorder started when she was like 12, was when her anorexia started. And now she's like me. She's in a, mid to late 40s, early 50s. So it's a long time to be walking around with an eating disorder. And I just kind of wanted to share that, because I felt for a long time the feelings would never stop. But they do come back, but they do also stop. And that has been a big thing for me to acknowledge, is that I'm now having moments where I don't feel like crap.
Yeah. Wow. When you start to recognize that the feeling is coming from your thinking, and it seems like you're seeing that, because you're seeing that when I wake up, I'm feeling okay, but then I start to have thoughts, and then I start to have feelings. Come here, dog. And then I start to, I'm helping out my old man.
It's all good. It's all good.
I'm starting to have those feelings. So I'm starting to have those thoughts that become feelings. And when you see where they're coming from, you see that our body is like that bubble making thought machine. We also see that we can freeze the thoughts. We can recycle them over and over and over. And then they become old and stale. They're just repeated and recycled thoughts. And we'll get new thinking if we start to look towards this. And the new thinking can come from that space of innate wellness within us. And that is the joy. That's where our joy comes from. And I like to think that it's a feeling. It's not even sometimes it's not even a thinking. It's a feeling that just kind of comes from underneath. From underneath our thinking, from underneath are kind of underneath the hood of our operating system, that electricity that gives us life.
But to get that feeling, you have to create space. Because
Yeah.
if your body is full of negative thinking and negative feeling, and I am using very human terms by going negative, when your body's full, there's no room. And that's what I get just from, as you were talking, it's like this download is just dropping into my brain going, how can I feel joy if there's no space? And if I'm full, if I'm already chock full to the top of all of these thoughts and feelings that I don't even want to be having, I have to create the space. And then the space comes from, for me, sitting like I'm doing now, sitting and being okay with sitting in the nothingness. That was something I struggled with when I first started doing this work a while ago. This is before my mum even got sick. I was in my 30s, and I remember spending time in the nothingness, but there was no one around me at the time that was sitting in that same space. We weren't having these kinds of conversations 13, 14 years ago. This wasn't the conversation that I was having when I started my other TV show. But this is different. It's different conversations. And I really get that the nothingness scared me back then. I didn't know what that was. It was too quiet. It was too silent. It was too unknown. But now the nothingness is coming in. I'm like, oh, I know you. You're like an old friend. I felt you before. This is that moment just before some good starts coming in, because when I was in the nothingness and good started to come in to my life, I flipped out. I freaked out. I actually thought I was going a bit insane, because it just didn't make sense in my brain to feel good. And so my brain convinced me that I was going insane and I was going mad. So I shut all of that down. I went, we got to lock that shit up. Don't feel good. You can't do that. That's just, don't do that. And so I did. I locked it all and I walked away from everything and went back into my victim bubble and my cave, and went back into my comfortable little ruminating head and bad feelings. And now that I'm in that nothingness, and I'm so glad that we're having this conversation, because it's just validated for me, the nothingness is safe. It's okay. It doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't, just because you're not feeling anything, you don't have to try and fill that void with stuff. Don't fill it with watching stuff. Don't fill it with getting on Facebook. Don't fill it with having a conversation with someone. Don't fill it with cooking or cleaning or gardening. Just stop and feel the space, and then just wait and see what happens. And it could take me another 6 months of sitting and waiting before I actually feel any kind of happiness and joy. It's also not having where is it? I've been sitting in the nothingness for a couple of days now. Where's my good stuff?
Yeah.
And because that, again, is the control, isn't it? It's that control coming in and going, well, I need to fill this hole. There's a void. I have to shove it filled with something. As opposed to, no, it's okay. It's perfectly safe. Just be in the nothingness for a while.
It can be scary. And I remember even just a couple of months ago feeling like it was kind of like a trust fall with the universe.
Yeah.
Like it was just like, okay, I'm falling back. And then and being scared the whole time because there's nothing to grab onto. We tend to, like you say, when we try and fill it, we try and grab onto things and hold on to them as hard as we can. That's where sometimes addiction comes into play.
Yeah.
And we can lean back and I do it again and again. And every single time I'm caught because I'm buoyant, because I'm that beach ball.
So this has started up a whole new conversation, because now I want to know what there are actually so many different conversations I want to have with you now, because one of them is, for you say the universe as opposed to God. I have a very I struggle with a relationship with the word God. So I use the term universe, but I also know most of the people around me have stopped using the term universe, and they're starting to use the term God, and they're going down the path of the Bible. So I'm looking at myself going, is there something, have I missed something? Like, when did the universe all of a sudden become God? When did that change? So I'd love to hear your thoughts about that. And also the trust. Do you think you had to find trust for yourself? And how did you start doing trust falls with the universe? Like, was there a relationship between you trusting you and you trusting the universe, and kind of doing that together? I know this is going to be another like 3-hour phone call, but it's such a good topic, because it's something else I struggle with, is trusting the universe. My mum died and left me as a single mum with a baby. Like, I don't trust the universe. I don't trust my physical body. I don't trust my emotional body. I don't trust my thoughts. I don't trust the universe. I don't trust God. I don't trust the divine. Again, the control, creating the eating disorder, also comes from trust. So can we just unpack that whole conversation too, please?
Oh gosh, I love it. Because I wasn't trusting my own body, my own intuition, when I was in that space of freaking out. I was going on, because I'd read so many books, so I thought that the books had the answers, and I was going on to Google and researching just over and over again, and like my wife would catch me on like Google researching what to do, because I didn't know.
Good old Dr. Google, it's always got the answers. Yeah.
It really did. It does for some things.
Yeah.
It does. It's a tool when you need it for something, but it can't answer things like what's the meaning of life, or what am I doing here, or what's my purpose. It's useless for that. But we have an intuitive guidance. So, and this is kind of the fun experiment. So I would never ask you to go from 0 to 100 as far as trust is concerned. The invitation would be to just give it even 1% more and see what happens. And
in what way, though? Like, what does that mean, give it 1% more? Can you give specifics? That's my control. I need specifics.
Exactly. Okay. So I'm going to try and speak to, because I think that's coming from your intellectual mind, who's like, I want the formula, right?
I need to know the how.
Yeah. But
because the how is but isn't that the trust issue, though? Needing to know the how is the lack of trust, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that was such a good realization right now.
Yeah.
Like, damn it. Yeah. That part in my brain, the how, I need to know how. It's like, yes, you need to know how, because you don't trust. God damn that rational, logical thinking part of my brain that just told me that.
Yeah. There's a part of you that does have a knowing, though, that does have the trust already. It's already connected. It's the part of you that heals your cuts. You don't have to trust it to do that. It just is going to do it automatically. You don't have to trust it to go to sleep when you're tired or tell you what it needs. It will automatically do that for you. Our intellectual brain can kind of get in the way and run haywire, right? We know that. We've experienced that. When you start to see that there's a part of you that can do that, that's already trusting, well then it's not up here. It's not in your intellectual mind, because the only intellectual mind won't trust what it doesn't understand, and it can't understand that intuitive knowing. It suspects it, actually. It's like, no. But we have this intuitive knowing that's underneath the surface at all times. It's there for us. It's there for us in our darkest times and our most challenging times, and it breaks through the surface of our intellectual minds, sometimes to help us out. I know that when I was going through this experience, I wanted to be here. I wanted to be talking to people about things like this. And there came a point where it was kind of like I had to choose. I could either continue going down this path of dependency, of fear around food, or I could choose this path of life, of being with my wife, of eating wonderful food again, and being independent, being connected with myself again. And I had a knowing that I needed to choose this path. I had it out in a notebook, and I made a list of 2 sides, and one side really was, this is kind of a cool tidbit, is my mother's mom's name was Mort, which means death. So I do think that path would have led to my death. I know it would have. And my mom's maiden name is Life. I changed my name to Rich Life, to her name, just a little bit before this happened to me. And so I had this knowing, this part of me that I've kind of fell back on, even through those scary nights where I was pacing at 3 a.m. I wanted to be here. I wanted to be here and see what else happens. I was curious.
Curiosity saved you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
It's very easy to punish yourself for the curiosity and the interest and the questioning and the wanting more or wanting different. It's so easy to punish yourself for that.
Yeah.
That to allow it and go, yeah, what about the possibility? about the possibility that this isn't all of it. This is just a very small blip. Seems like a long blip. People talk about the dark night of the soul a lot, and I frequently, when someone says, oh, I'm going through a dark night of the soul, I'm like, dude, it's not a night. For some of us, it's an entire decade. 2 decades for a few of us. It is not just a night, and it is it's not easy, but I'm so glad we're having this conversation, because it is another moment of validation. That's, at one point you were lying in the mud. At one point you were lying with the mud over the top of you, and then you were lying in the mud, and then you started to push yourself up, and then you were sitting, and now maybe you're in between kind of kneeling and standing, and every now and then you stand, and every now and then you kneel, and sometimes you might sit. But it seems to me like you're past lying in the mud. And also you pass believing that that's what you deserve.
Oh yeah.
You're kind of more on the side of, no, I deserve to not even be in the mud at all. I deserve to be standing on top of a mountain looking out at the ocean. That's what I deserve. That's kind of what I get from you now.
What if looking out from that mountaintop, that same feeling, what if that was more of our lives? That's what I want to help people to see. I'm seeing it kind of in blips.
Yeah.
And then when it comes, it doesn't even have to be that. It can be just like with you, it sounds like it's just you're starting to have that space, and then some of that like joy starts to bubble to the surface. And what you can do, what you're allowed to do, is be like, oh, this is the joy. I have it right now. I need to not lose it, and I need to capture it and bottle it. But if you have gratitude, just say, oh, thank you. Then you'll start to see it more and more. And the more that you can see through the ice that is blocking you, the fear, the thoughts, the worrying intellectual mind that is blocking you, you'll see that what's flowing underneath is love. Unconditional love. And what?
Yeah.
It's always been there. It's always been there. We're looking the other way. We're looking at our thinking. We're looking at the stress, and when people, that's what people, when the wise people say, look within, that's what they're talking about. It's not going to be outside of you. It's going to be within. You kind of have to turn around and look at yourself and if you see something that you don't like, it's probably coming from that intellectual mind. And that's okay. Like you found, just let it pass. Let the bubble pop. It'll go, you'll get new bubbles, and maybe the next one will be a thought from that place of love. Maybe not. Because those fear bubbles are serving you. They're trying to protect you. Your body is trying to give you what it thinks you need. So those fear bubbles are like, oh, here you go. You need safety. I got you. Now you're gonna feel, you're gonna fear, you're gonna enclose, you're going to cut off from other people because you need that for your safety. It thinks that because of some of the thinking that you have. You say, okay, let it pop. And you will, if you let more bubbles come through, as long as you don't freeze up the system, it will bring you back, and you'll see. It's hard to describe. It's something that I see more and more.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it, and I'm so grateful for it, and I'm in love with it, and it's something that I want to show other people, but I can't. I can kind of point to it, but I can't. Like, I want to be like, hey, here it is. It's right here. But it's you find it in yourself. I can't give it to you.
Mm-hmm.
Wish it could. I would give it in a heartbeat.
Throw it through the screen.
Yeah. I would be like, here you go. I really do. I have more than enough.
I know 2 more questions that I want to ask you. And one of them is on this, because as you're talking and I'm feeling that I can feel this, I think there's a really big part of me that is too afraid to feel those good feelings. Did you have that? Did you have to go through that? I'm afraid of feeling the good feelings.
I think for a lot of people, it is very different. It is very unfamiliar. And that can provide fear, because we're used to being comfortable, even if we're comfortable in our own kind of horrible, like, messed up nest of our own thinking.
Yeah. We're comfortable in the uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can be. For me, I was kind of, when I was trying to manipulate those feelings, I was starting to feel that a little bit, but I don't think it was really the genuine feelings. So I don't know that I was scared of it. I think that people get it and they don't know where it's coming from. And I think people get glimpses of it in their life when they're having these beautiful times with their sons or daughters or family, or maybe friends, and they think it's the friends that's providing it. Again, that misattribution.
Yeah.
And maybe your friends trigger it, but it's coming from within you. And it's coming from your space of connection and love. And yeah, I think that can be scary for people, because it feels very exposed. You do start to have to find a little bit of comfort in it, and kind of try it on, and be like, oh gosh, what was that? And then be like, I kind of loved that, but I don't know. And then you kind of put it back on, and you kind of do that a couple of times, and then you start to be like, oh, okay, wow, this is me. Oh my gosh, this is not something that I'm like, it's almost the reverse. It's not a clothing. It's the real you, the real authentic you. And that can be scary because
Mm.
in the past we would have those masks and people would reject the mask, and so we couldn't share them, our true authentic selves. What if they rejected that? Oh,
Yeah.
but if you are really in this, you know that it can't be rejected.
Mm. Mm. I'm going to let that all seep in. And there's one more question that I wanted to ask you.
Sure.
And you may have already answered it. And it is about food. Did you just have to make yourself eat food regardless of what you thought about it?
Hmm. I think I had to add it in a little bit at a time
Yeah.
and notice. I think this was a little bit more before I had this understanding. If I had this understanding back then, I would have seen, okay, that's my thoughts that are coming up, that's causing the anxiety, because those thoughts can cause you to actually, it will validate literally your experience. So it can even like make you, if you're afraid that this food will cause you to feel crappy or give you like it will cause you to, I was really afraid of blood sugar issues.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was one of the things that I was really afraid of, that I was like, oh, I can't eat fruits, I can't have too many carbs. And your body will confirm that. So a lot of the times we have to be careful of that. We try to separate what's really an allergy, and you can check with your doctor, and what's kind of our minds confirming for us, because it's this confirming machine. And but it's confirming, it's not confirming the food, it's confirming a lot of the times the thinking about the food.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I had to eat the food and then be okay, and then be a little anxious, and then see, oh, okay, I had a cookie, and like you said, we actually had that joke with my wife. I didn't die. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I guess you got a joke and go, well, 20 years time, if I die, it's because of that cookie.
Just that one cookie.
Just
Yep,
that
yep.
one cookie
I'm
screwed me
gonna
forever.
be in 20 years cursing that. Oh, I shouldn't have had that cookie 20 years. Gosh, I'm not gonna even be thinking about it.
Yeah. 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 Wow. Oh, I'm so glad I had this conversation with you, because it's really, really, really validated so much of how much my fear is anchoring in the fear of feeling my feelings, the fear of joy, fear of eating, the fear of letting go of control, the fear of being hurt, the fear of feeling hurt. It's just all just so much fear, just bundles of fear. And the only way through is to kind of, I always said, just sit with it, and sit with, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Really don't know how I'm going to do it. But eating the food that I'm afraid to eat, and sit with the fear anyway. I can feel it in my stomach. Like I can feel it. It's just this knot of, no, please don't make me eat any food. I can't. Yeah. I don't have, everyone that I've talked to that has an eating disorder, they've all said my partner was just amazing. Like they sat there with me and they talked me through it, and they communicated with me, and they were my biggest cheerleader. And then I look around and go, shit, well, I don't have one of those, so I'm gonna have to come up with my own partner in my own brain to cheer me on in those times when there's no one around. I mean, coaches are great, but they're not there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're there for support, but they can't be there when you're eating breakfast, lunch, dinner, and all the meals in between. But I'm so thankful we had this conversation because it has really helped.
And I maybe want to point to the fact that you do have kind of a partner in this that's even better than a spouse, and that's your intuitive knowing.
Mm.
And that
let me go back to trust. Then the whole conversation is going to loop back to trust.
Yeah. And this is maybe a helpful. I think this is a metaphor that you'll resonate with. That I think a lot of people, they have this, they're living in this fear. And it's almost like they're kind of walking along this knife's edge, like they're walking along this exposed hike where there's a cliff to one side and there's a cliff to other side, and you have to watch every single step.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, they get stuck in this and they come to a point where they're like, oh my gosh, there's a cliff's edge right in front of me.
Yeah.
This is what it felt like to start to eat some of those foods. It felt like I thought that there was a cliff's edge and I was blindfolded and I was having to take steps towards it.
Yeah.
But I found out that all of that, the cliff on both sides, is made up from our thinking. That I was making up the cliff that I was walking towards. I was anticipating it. It's like, oh gosh. And when you start to see that it's made of thought, well, thought's this amazing thing that you can pull up and it can be real and it can be solid, but if it's something that's made of thought, it can also disappear like that.
Mm.
Because we're giving it that power when it's solid. And we can like you talked about, letting go. We can let go, and all of that power dissolves. And 99% of our problems, in my opinion, maybe more, are made of thought.
Yeah.
And then guess what? You're not walking on a cliff's edge anymore.
Yeah.
You can walk in a field. You can start to play. You can start to do cartwheels. You can go over here or go over there. We were like this, and you might forget. You might be like, oh, you might go back into that old thinking. That old thinking likes to come up. Mm-hmm. And then you find yourself back on the cliff's edge and you have to watch every step. And then you're like, oh, okay, I'll remember. Oh yeah, it's made of thought. And then it opens up again. And you see clearly, you see it for what it really is.
I'm so uncomfortable. I'm gonna take my discomfort and just let it join me throughout the day.
Yeah.
This has been the most uncomfortable conversation I think I've had so far. That has really just yeah, it's kind of put a magnifying glass on the truth of what has been stopping me, and the truth of how much I've been abandoning me, and the truth of the fear. And like, it's just, thanks, Rich. It's it's really just, yep, I'm in the mud. I have a little bit of mud on me now. I feel like
Yeah.
I've just kind of plopped a little bit of mud on me, going, okay, all right, well, I'm just gonna sit here. um I really am so thankful we had this conversation.
Yeah.
I really am. So I need 2 more questions for you. Can you please share how people can find you, details?
Yes.
And is there anything that you feel like you want to add that you haven't added, that you just think is just the cherry on the top to this call? And you don't have to add anything because it might be complete for you. But if it's not complete, is there anything that you would add?
I'll start with the contact information. I'm a coach, and this is what I love to do. I love to help people see their own innate wisdom. And you can contact me at richliferealization@gmail.com.
Mm-hmm.
And then my Instagram is at richliferealization. And then let's see if I can find my phone number. I have a phone number too.
I can also put it all in the description as well.
Oh, yeah, beautiful. Okay, yeah, we'll leave that for later. And then, cherry on top. I wanted to say one little thing, and then I'll kind of share the cherry. And that's that you might start to see this stuff, and then you look back and you're like, oh crap, I've lived my whole life according to these rules, and they've kind of been made up. And then you can feel really bad. And that can make you feel really sad, but have grace for yourself. It's an innocent use of your own creative power of thought.
Yeah.
You were innocent. You didn't know any better. And maybe that's the cherry, is that you can start to see that then other people are innocent in their misuse of their own creative power of their thinking. And then, gosh, everything becomes so not personal anymore. I'm seeing this more and more. Like, it's less and less personal. And when it's less and less personal, you have more and more freedom. To play in the field, do some cartwheels, do a roundhouse, dance. That's all.
I love that. Thank you. Oh, this has been such a good call. And I want to share with you, actually, that's why I changed my surname to Grace. So it was a constant daily reminder for me to remember to be graceful and remember to have grace for myself and for other people. Because we are all just, if we're not out of the mud, standing on the mountaintop, then we're in the mud. And if we're in the mud, then we are probably reacting. We are probably hurting. We are probably being mean. We are probably being critical and judgmental. And we are probably punishing not only everyone else, but also ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's good to remember to have a lot of grace and a lot of care and a lot of compassion. So much compassion. Because we're all in the mud together at the moment. And I think we're all getting out of it together.
Yeah.
You rock, Rich. This is such a good call.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It was so my pleasure. And thank you I'm so glad I saw you on the chat, and Yeah.
Yeah, me
Um,
too.
I think well, as I was listening to your podcast, I was like, oh, okay, this will be something special, I think.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. You helped you created the container. You asked the right questions, and not the questions that was like on a script. You asked the questions that you were curious about.
I asked the
And that,
questions from the mud.
yeah, and that
Yeah.
comes from your innate wellness, your innate guidance.
All the feelings for this conversation with Rich. There's so much. There's so much. I'm going to watch this again. Please do make sure you go and check him out on the description below. He's amazing. He's incredible. Go and check him out. It's, yeah, this is the best chat I think I've had, maybe, about this, about eating and fear and food. And this has been incredible. I'm so thankful. So go check him out in the description below. And please also remember to subscribe to this channel. You don't want to miss any more of these conversations that I'm having. There is more to come about orthorexia and eating disorders, anorexia, bulimia. There's a lot more to come about this topic. And then I've already planned season 3, which is going to be about women in business through trauma. So there's a lot of trauma. It's going to be, it is basically a show based on trauma conversations, trauma recovery, trauma resolution conversations. So please make sure you subscribe to this channel. And remember, you are greatly appreciated. Thanks. Mwah.